was just here?
Very conscious. I've always wanted to live in New Jersey.
Really?
Yes.
Wait, I think you told me that before.
Yeah,
That's like a very endearing quality because I feel like a lot of people don't get it.
I agree. I never understood all the hate for New Jersey.
Me either. It's the best.
Yeah.
What, Zach Braff didn't do it for you?
No, I mean, that helped. I was definitely into Garden State when I saw it. I was like, yes, I could stay on top of a large dump, right? Wait, is that a dump also when they're in the rain and they have like the parkas and they're like screaming?
No, it's like a quarry.
Have you ever been to the quarry?
I've never been there, but I love that movie. Like, that movie gets so much hate now. I don't know why. Like, people hate that movie. They say it's, like, so hipster and stupid. But for me, like, it actually really... The characters and the set design and, like, the locations, I feel like it's very New Jersey. Like, it's very accurate.
Yeah. There's a bit in there that is like hits me very hard. It's not like the most like not like a New Jersey bit, but there's a part in the beginning when he's a waiter in an Asian restaurant in LA, and he goes up to a table and he goes to take their order, and they ask if he has bread, and I'm like, man, I've been asked if I have bread in my own Asian restaurant that I work in so many times.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why are people looking for bread at a sushi place? Like
people just like they like something to like eat before they get to eat. Mm-hmm. You know, and like because people will be like, oh, do you have Chinese noodles? I'm like, no, like it's not a Chinese restaurant, so
it's every other Asian.
Yeah, it's literally
Chinese.
Yeah. But yeah, I think people just like to because it's not even like a filling yourself up thing. You want your mouth to be warmed up, and you want it to be like titillized, whatever the word is. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that the recycling has been picked up, we know that we won't get disturbed by the recycling once more during this podcast.
I'm against recycling anyway. The Earth's been around long enough. You know what I mean?
So you, Leah Russo, on the record, are against recycling.
100% against recycling.
Good.
Like, throw it away. Mm-hmm. You know?
Mm-hmm.
We have a guest who has already graced the airwaves with his love of New Jersey. Brendan O'Brien.
Yes, thank you. I am just excited that the podcast is back. It's been a void in my podcast listening, so thank you guys for being back again. I feel like we need movie, cinema, film now more than ever. So thank you.
Yes, that's true.
We figured it was time to get back to the podcast since movies are starting up because Christopher Nolan decided we needed to start up because he needs to make money on his investment. It's still in the same tax year. He needs to get it in now.
Yeah, he's like, I can do whatever I want. I created Inception.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering when they're going to release A Quiet Place 2, because I remember that was one of the first big movies that they canceled or postponed, and I haven't heard anything.
Yeah. Well, it was supposed to be in the spring that it was going to come out. Yeah. I wonder if that movie is just a movie they really want to be in the spring, so they'll just wait for the full calendar year to come back around on it.
Maybe. Well, Murphy announced today that they're going to be able to open movie theaters at 25% capacity, which I'm not going to go because I feel like it's a bad, as much as I want to go, I don't know if it's safe even at that capacity.
Agreed.
So anyway, we're here to talk about Charlie Kaufman movies in excitement and anticipation of his new movie coming out on Netflix called I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I definitely had a huge Charlie Kaufman void in my life.
We all have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Anomalisa isn't very well. We'll talk about it later.
There.
But it's sad that we haven't had anything since Anomalisa.
Yeah.
In 5 years.
So we thought we would go through all of his movies one by one and talk about them, and then we can do an episode when we all see the movie.
Yes.
Part 2.
Oh yes.
And I could catch up on all of the Charlie Kaufman films I haven't seen.
Yes. So obviously his first movie that came out was Being John Malkovich, but was that the first one of his that you guys saw?
Also, we say films of his, he's a writer. These films, but he's directing this film.
He also directed Anomalisa and Schenectady, New York, but we're going to go over all the films that he's written.
Because that's really what he is.
Yeah.
Although his directorial stuff has been very impressive, just because it's so big and ambitious. Because Schenectady was his first thing, and that was just actually that might have been the first thing of his that I saw, and I think that
really,
yeah, and I think it was very shocking to watch.
What?
Because that movie is so so sad and so dreary, but also very beautiful.
How old were you?
Let's see, that came out in, I must have been
2008.
So I probably saw it like a year or two after it came out. So maybe I was like 17 or 18.
So you saw that before Eternal Sunshine?
Yeah, I did.
Wow, what a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also did.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that your first movie from him?
No, my first movie from him was, alright, so this is going to go down the wormhole a little bit.
Okay.
So when I discovered the internet and like online shopping, I don't even know how I was paying for these things, but I was on eBay, and I was looking for cheap movies because I was like, oh my gosh, like I could just get stuff on eBay, like I could just bid. This is so sick. Exactly what eBay wants you to have, like this childhood like.
I did the same thing when I was like 12.
Yeah. And that was one of the movies that was super cheap. Being John Malkovich, there's like a $1 DVD, and that movie blew my mind and was probably one of the movies that made me want to become a filmmaker, want to get into film, and like want to do visual storytelling and like do comedy.
Well, that's a good jumping off point because we're going to start with that. So why don't you talk about what your impression was?
Yeah, so I probably watched it when I was like 13 or 14, which is probably the target demographic of most American cinema. Is 13 and 14-year-olds. Yeah, no, it definitely hit me pretty hard because it was like very funny, very unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It definitely like kind of got the celebrity obsession that we were gonna have like before it even happened. Like that was 1999, before everything became the me like era of like everybody posting, everybody wanting to be a celebrity, everybody wondering what it's like to be famous, everybody wanting to be rich, everybody wondering what it's like to be rich, and like being very outward about it. And like this is literally a movie about people going through a portal to be John Malkovich. Like it's the dumbest concept ever, but for some reason like you believe it because like it's so grounded with like the other characters and stuff like that. And like it sucks because like the movie definitely has some like domestic violence stuff in it that's like did not age well. It's very hard to watch, like some like holding, like I don't want to spoil it too much, but like it was made 20 years ago, but like
Wait, I think we should do spoilers.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe you can do like this movie starts at this one and this movie starts at this time. That way, like if someone's only seen one or two movies, they can just listen to that part, and then because these have all been out. Like I'm sorry, we're not gonna wait for your ass. Like, but, you know,
because even Anomalisa's been out now like
5 years.
Yeah, so
I think you said it was
but
5 years.
I think I will say I don't know if there's any. I think Eternal Sunshine is the only one that comes to mind where I'm like, oh, if I heard the spoiler for that, then I'd be like mad that I knew about it ahead of time. Everything else, I'm like.
Well, there's just so much in these movies that even if you did have a spoiler, I was actually explaining to someone who's never seen Eternal Sunshine before, I was explaining like the premise to them, and they were like fascinated, and then they were like, well, what happens? Like, you have to tell me what happens. And I was like, you need to watch it. And they were like, no, like, you have to tell me now, like, what happens. And I was like, I don't want to like ruin it for you. And they were like, no, like, do they get back together? Like, what's gonna happen and everything? And I'm like, well, and so I explained the whole thing, and like, they were still like so fascinated to watch it. It wasn't like they were like, oh, okay, got it. I know the story now, I'm fine.
Yeah.
There's just so many layers to everything, and there's, I think, especially because like we are on the younger side, I guess, compared to who, I don't know, but like we
everyone else older than us.
I guess. But it's like we saw it, like he saw it when he was 13. So I'm sure now there's so many more things in it that you notice or whatever that you didn't pick up on when you were 13. And
oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it grows, like every year that we watch it. Like I can't believe Schenectady, New York is already like 12 years old because I loved it so much when I first saw it. And when I think about how young I was, and I didn't feel so young at the time, I was like, I understand this. And now as I get older, especially because so much of it is like about death and like aging and stuff, as I watch it more, it feels like there's more there every time I watch it, yet it's this unchanged piece of film.
Yeah, so spoil away, Jordan.
Yeah, spoilers for Being John Malkovich and every other Charlie Kaufman movie.
Oh no, like locking a woman in a cage, and like there's a lot of like gender stuff that's like written by a straight white dude, you know.
Can we talk about how good Cameron Diaz is in the movie though?
She's amazing.
Yeah.
No, it's like honestly one of her best roles probably.
It
and,
is.
like, why the movie is like so beloved. Like if you like cut him out being like super crazy and like putting her in a cage and like the physical violence of that, like there's a lot of stuff, and maybe like write the last like 20 minutes with somebody who's not a straight white dude.
Yeah.
And then like I feel like you have like the greatest movie of all time. Like I feel like that stuff just did not age well, but like everything else, I just love that film so much. Like the humor is still so funny today. Like especially like the stuff in the first half of the film where it's just like the Office humor and just like before the Office.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and just like I think about the scene where like the what's her name, Clarice or
Maxine?
Clarice? No, the assistant lady at the beginning.
Oh, I can't remember her
For
name.
the older guy.
I know you're talking about though. Yeah.
Yeah.
When she like can't get his name when he keeps telling her Suarez.
Yeah.
I feel like that is like my life so often. And like so often people just don't like. They don't like understand that you might mishear. They just continue as if like you're supposed to just know what they said.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of New Jersey, my favorite thing is how it spits you out into the New Jersey Turnpike, and the way that they always say that like so matter of factly in the movie. They're just like, yeah, like the New Jersey Turnpike. Like, I just think that's so funny.
Yeah, no, and like that's one of the things that Charlie Kaufman's really good at, is writing really good stuff about like the Northeast, especially like the tri-state area. It feels like he's very familiar with this area.
Yeah.
But being John Malkovich is like kind of the kickoff to him doing what he does best, which is combining like the very like mundane, normal, everyday life with like the most absurd kind of people. Because I think everyone gives some of their best performances in this. Because John Cusack is another person who. He's like always kind of hit or miss for me, but like the misses are like that are more that like I'm like, yeah, it was fine. But when he goes like kind of bizarre and crazy like this, it's like very, very intriguing to watch.
I went through a phase when I was like 17 where I was like in love with John Cusack, like not even as a celebrity. Like I would like lay in bed like thinking about him at night, like the way I would with like a real crush that I had. Like I was like in love with him, and this movie was a big part of that because I tend to like. I mean, yeah, everybody likes like, not that he's not good looking, he's super good looking, but like I like have feelings for people that have like talent, especially in like the film industry or any kind of artsy industry. So I was just like obsessed with him, and I watched so many of his movies. Like he's done so many movies. He just cranks them out like it's nothing. And there are a lot. I mean, he is in a lot of really great movies, but I feel like more often than not, he's kind of like forgotten about, you know. And the fact that he actually got like an Oscar nomination for this, I love, because I feel like this is the movie that he's probably gotten the most like acclaim for. I feel like this is really his like mark on the world. This and then like Say Anything, but that's more of like a cultural. Like teenage kind of thing, whereas this is more of like a serious, respected, Oscar-y kind of movie. So, yeah, and I just think Cameron Diaz, because like so many of her roles, like I love her, I think she's really talented, but so many of her roles are like, oh, she's hot, you know what I mean? And it's disappointing because she is really talented. Like she isn't someone who just has to get by on her looks. So I love the fact that in this movie, like she still looks beautiful, but she doesn't look like, you know, the way that she looks in other movies, and she was able to like not wear any makeup and have a different hair color, and I think some people probably didn't even like realize that it was her.
Yeah.
And her performance is amazing. And then I think Catherine Keener is
Keener's awesome.
She's so great and everything.
Yes.
And then of course John Malkovich himself, like I think it's so cool that he did this, like that, because I feel like that's his legacy. Like even though he's done so many good movies, like this is like in 100 years, if you've never heard of John Malkovich and you watch this movie, you're gonna be like, yo, like that guy is amazing.
Yeah. I think this is probably the first John Malkovich movie I ever watched. So like this was like, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who know him mostly from this, and you like get a lot of him in it.
Well, because you hear, like I remember hearing the name because of this movie, and I was like, oh, is that, like I didn't know for sure if he was a real actor or not until I was older, and then I was like, oh, like that's John Malkovich, like of being John Malkovich. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's also funny, the demographic of people who probably love being John Malkovich is now like in their 50s and 60s and 70s, and they're like, oh, the Space Force, I'm really excited about the Space Force. And like they're the target demographic for that.
Yeah.
And like Billions, it's like any old rich like white dude is like now like, oh yeah, I watched John Malkovich when he was on the stage, now I watch him on Billions.
Do you think this movie works if it's any other celebrity except for John Malkovich?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it would have to be somebody that was like in his, like it couldn't be somebody that was super famous. Like it couldn't have been like Tom Cruise or something, right? It had to be someone who was like famous but not overwhelmingly or like.
Made it would be like Michael Cera.
Oh my God, weird.
Michael Cera.
I don't know what that would have been like.
Big. He's too big, probably.
I think he's a little too big, and also he doesn't have like the, what's the word? Like the. I'm putting my fingers up like an Italian chef. Yeah. No, not chutzpah's like, ugh.
Okay.
This is like the prestige of John Malkovich, right?
Right. He's more of like a hangout movie actor, I guess.
Yeah.
If that's a thing. But I think it's hard for us to know because we don't remember how famous John Malkovich was in the 90s and 80s. Like, I can't, like, I know, like, I remember when Michael Cera came out, and, like, I remember, like, what he's been, like, in the cultural consciousness since Superbad. But I just know that John Malkovich was, like, respected actor, but not super famous, like, more of a character actor. Or maybe like a step above that with fame. I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to even name John Malkovich movies, to be honest with you. Like, I know I've seen him in other movies, but this is his legacy, and he should be really thankful, I think, to Charlie Kaufman and Spike Jonze that this is his legacy because of this idea and this incredibly creative man.
Yeah.
Also, he is like the epitome of like the working actor.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why it like works so well, is because like he is all about the stage. Like, people didn't really know who he was, but he would give so many great performances.
Right, because I guess like what they were going for is that when you hear being like, it's like, oh, the concept of this movie is that there's a portal into John Malkovich's brain. It's not like, oh, John Malkovich. It's like, oh, John Malkovich. Like, I think I know who that is. Maybe, right? Also, just like because Spike Jonze did direct this. I think the Spike Jonze and Charlie Kaufman pairing, it's nice that Charlie Kaufman is directing stuff for himself, but the pairing of the two of them, I think, was like a very like a match made in heaven.
Absolutely. And we can talk about that when we get to adaptation.
Yeah.
But any other thoughts? We should probably say, my name is Leah. I'm here with Brendan and Jordan. Do you want to like just differentiate your voices in case a random person listens to this?
This is Jordan. No, this is. No, I cannot. Being Jordan Freed is not this movie. I would love to.
Have you guys seen that film?
Be Jordan
They made a
Freed.
spoof of it.
Did you really?
Yeah, in film club.
Oh my
in high
God!
school.
Why am I not
I think
surprised?
it's still up on YouTube.
Whoa, look it up because we're all gonna look it up.
We're gonna
after this
watch
is
it.
over.
Yeah, maybe it'll go viral. No, it's terrible. That's how much I love the film. I got my film club friends to make a parody film of it. We also made a kung fu film at one point.
Whoa, wait, it's all on your YouTube?
It was like
YouTube?
it was more like zombie like fight.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was like weird.
Nice.
So do we have any other thoughts
Oh yeah.
about being John Malkovich?
Sorry, I just got wrapped up in Jordan's kung fu zombie movie.
We've all been there.
Yeah, no, it's just. I think Jordan's kind of put it best. It's like very unique. Like, it's definitely, if you Google like unique movies or movies that are not like any other movies, being John Malkovich will probably come up because it is very unorthodox in the best way possible.
Yeah. So shall we move on to Human Nature?
You're gonna have to talk about it. 'Cause I've not seen it.
Yes.
You guys have not seen it. Well, I think a lot of people haven't seen it.
So don't spoil it, because we'll talk about it next time.
Okay. Honestly, no, it's not my favorite movie from him. I don't know really how to explain it because I don't know what they were really going for. There are like those Charlie Kaufmanisms where there's like one line here or there that you like know is about such a bigger thing than what they're saying, and those lines are there where you're like, oh my God, you know. Like there's this really funny bit where Tim Robbins is sitting at his parents' house. He's, you know, like 40 at this point, and he's having dinner at his parents' house, and his parents have just adopted a new little kid who's like 6. And the little kid is like, even though Tim Robbins' character is like a doctor and he's very accomplished, like the kid is like saying all this stuff that's showing up him, and he's like, well, I've been your son for like 40 years, and this little kid is now like telling me off at the dinner table, you know what I mean? And he even like flirts with his like girlfriend and stuff, and it's like things like that are in it that are very Kaufman. And then there's other things that you feel like weren't fully developed. Like it almost feels like this was, and I don't know if this was written before John Malkovich, but it almost feels like this feels feels more like it would be his first movie that he didn't really have his footing on yet or something, because the ideas are there, but it's just not as effective, I think. And it's basically about, like, Patricia Arquette is in it. She's so good, and she's someone who was born with, like, full body hair, like an ape almost, like not that thick, but like just kind of like what you would, just kind of like, I don't know, kind of thick, like thicker than most women's like body hair, but it's all over her whole like body, her neck, like everywhere. And you know, obviously she grows up like having a very hard life because of this, and she's always having to shave her whole body, but then it comes back, and so she makes a living like as a like circus freak. And then there's this other character played by Rhys Ifans, and he is literally like an ape person, like Tarzan from the jungle. And then there's Tim Robbins, who is a doctor, and he tries to like turn that character into a regular human being. And so the thing is, like, it kind of deals with issues of like, well, what does it really mean to be human? And like, is it really, we act like we're so superior, but is it really better to be a human than to be an animal? Like, animals are so free, like they don't even care about anything. Like, we're sitting here like killing each other about like money and stuff, whereas like they only do that if they have to for food, like things like that, you know what I mean? Like things like that. And so I definitely appreciate the movie, but there's other stuff in it too that I just don't really feel like needed to be there, I guess. And I remember I was listening to an interview with Kaufman, and he said like he thinks it was a good movie and a good concept, but like somewhere along the way it just didn't end up how he wanted it to. And it was directed by Michel Gondry, who also directed Eternal Sunshine. And I think that Kaufman was much happier with Eternal Sunshine. Like, he loves that movie and how that movie came out, whereas this one, I think maybe they had disagreements or something like that, and it just wasn't as good. Whereas, like, Spike Jonze is a much, he was a much better collaborator, I think, on Being John Malkovich than this one. So, I mean, it's worth watching. Like, especially if you love Charlie Kaufman, you kind of have to, like, round out the whole group of movies, but I wouldn't say like it's a must-see otherwise.
Sounds very interesting though. Yeah,
it is like it. I feel like it sounds more interesting like describing it, because then you watch it and you're like, you feel like there's supposed to be, I think especially seeing these other Kaufman movies, you feel like there's supposed to be this moment where you're like, oh my god, like that just hit me so hard, like I understand where you're coming from, and I don't really feel like that happens. But yeah. Tweet us and send us your opinions on human nature, because it is something that I'm interested to talk to people about.
Yeah. That sounds like a rewatch or a watch if you've never watched it before.
Yeah. So now I guess we can move on to Adaptation,
yes,
which is one of my top favorite movies of all time.
Same.
I just rewatched it a few weeks ago, and I didn't even know what to say about it. Like, I haven't watched it in years, and it's one of those rewatches where like I have to be ready to rewatch it. Like, I'm not just gonna like turn it on. I have to be like, okay, I'm gonna watch Adaptation tonight, and then like prepare for it, and then like watch it. And this viewing of it, I was just like, I posted on Twitter, and I didn't even have an opinion outside of like, I don't even know what to say about the movie. Like, it's so good that I don't even feel like I could do any good by explaining it.
Yeah. Like, explain what the premise is, or explaining.
I think it just destroyed the ability for other people to do like the screenwriter who can't think of an idea. Like, I think that it did it to the best. Yeah. And like, I don't think you could really go back to it unless you have like the most creative idea ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like my experience watching this movie for the first time, and probably every time after that, was that like I couldn't believe it was a real movie as I was watching it. I'm like, this is just so amazing. It's just so good, and also like the whole like Nicolas Cage. That's the other thing too. Is like, it's a great Nicolas Cage watch, because you get two different versions of Nicolas Cage. But then like even like that, so like that's great on its own. But then you get the whole Meryl Streep and Chris Cooper storyline, which is also just like so good on its own. And it feels like they're two different movies until they finally converge. Like, really in like toward the like middle end of it.
The acting is superior to I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, it's so weird how Nicolas Cage is known as like this campy actor, and I'm like, no, he's like a genuinely extremely talented, brilliant actor, and I feel like this is definitely his best performance. I mean, I love like Moonstruck and some of his earlier roles that did prove his talent, but this is just next level, and I can't describe how much I relate to the Charlie character, because like I completely feel that way all the time. Like I do not feel like the what's the brother's name? It starts with a D. His twin brother, who's like, you know, carefree and happy and goes for things no matter what, whereas Charlie's like inhibited by his own mind and is like supposed to be the smarter one, but how smart is he really if his brother is having all this success? And like the whole thing, the whole thing where they show behind the scenes of being John Malkovich,
yes.
and Charlie's like working on it, and his brother, like he tries to say hi to Catherine Keener and she's just like, oh hi, like whatever, and then like John Cusack like gives him a look like leave me alone or whatever, and then like but his brother becomes like BFF with them instantly, and it's like so easy. I feel that way all the time. Like I feel like when I'm in a group situation or when I'm like working on something, I always feel like everyone else becomes friends and no one like wants to hang out with me, and I'm just like, oh, like I feel like I always find out after, like because one of the people from the group is like, oh yeah, like we all went to like blah 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 last night, and I'm like, oh, I was busy, so cool. I mean, like, and the way that he like gets in his own way, and he's like too good for the screenwriting class, you know what I mean, and all that kind of stuff. Like I feel I've always felt, because like I've always been treated like I'm stupid because like I'm young and I have blonde hair and like I'm a woman and all that bullshit, and so I always like I went through a really long phase where I would always like try to sound really smart no matter what. Like I would think about what I was going to say so carefully, and I would try not to have any confusing statements, or like I would be afraid to question things. Like if people started talking about something I didn't know about, especially with like politics, I was so embarrassed, and I was like I would just try to not sound stupid, and I would just become so like just paranoid all the time. And then I would be around someone who is like, oh, actually, like, well, what is Obama's stance on foreign policy? Like, I don't really know. And I would be like, oh my god, like, I would never admit that. You know what I mean? And this person's just like, yeah, like, I don't really know. Like, can you explain it to me? And then the other person in the group is like, sure, yeah, like, he just recently passed this or whatever. And I would be like, oh, like, they're not afraid to ask that question. Like, I feel like I have to know everything.
Yeah.
And so that character, like, even though it's like a man.
Aries trait?
I don't know. That's a good. I don't think it is.
I also feel that way though.
Yeah, I'm not an Aries, and I definitely felt that way for sure.
It's like a human thing.
Yeah,
you know,
because I think it feels good to be the person who knows things in a conversation, especially if like it's something like politics or something a little more like heady or intellectual. But the problem is that like it only gets harder if you don't speak up and say you don't know something, because then if you pretend like you know something and then another conversation comes along, then you're like in this like downward spiral of just like not being able to contribute anything because you didn't say that you didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah, it's funny because you would never think, like, you're watching this movie, you probably wouldn't think that that's who I identify with if you just judged it, because it's like, he's a man, he's much older than me, you know, like, he has a different job than I do. I guess it's still in show business, but like, he's obviously a very different person than me, and yet I feel so connected to that character. And I just feel like I don't know if that kind of insecurity has ever been so perfectly portrayed on screen. Seriously.
Yeah, I think that's one, because the movie definitely applies to like if you are involved in film at all, or if you're a writer at all. Like there's a lot of things that are very specific to that experience. But I think that like that's about the insecurity and about being uncomfortable and about like your place in the world is like all like the universal stuff this movie does really well. That makes it a probably more accessible watch for someone who's not a writer or a film person, for sure.
I also think Chris Cooper's performance in this is crazy. Like, he is so that person. It's mind-blowing, like, how within probably 30 seconds of his character being on screen, you're like, I know exactly who that person is. Like, it's just so good. And Meryl Streep is always that way, but the contrast of them and, like, how she's so fascinated by him, again, like, the same way that Charlie is so fascinated by his brother, because, like, she feels like she has to be this, like, New York author, and, like, she's, you know, so dignified compared to this, like, guy who rummages through the swamp and has missing teeth and all this kind of stuff. And like all of her, they show that one scene where she's like with her friends in the apartment and they're talking about the dumbest, like they're laughing at him, you know, like he's some lowlife or something. And she's so fascinated by him because he's not inhibited by like all this bullshit of that like New York society stuff. Like he probably wouldn't even act like that if he was right at that dinner table. He would just still be himself. Like, that's so refreshing, you know? And I think that's why, like, it's so interesting to see them, like, fall for each other because they are so different, but yet, like, they kind of, like, she's someone who people look up to as this, like, talented writer, but she probably would rather be like him.
To rewatch it.
It's so good, Jordan. You're gonna die. It's just so good.
It's kind of sad how long ago I watched it. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what
life moves fast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because even like thinking about a lot of these Charlie Kaufman movies that came out, or like the Charlie Kaufman written movies that came out, it like a lot of them do feel like they were so long ago, and like I think it's just, but they do have a lot of rewatchability. There's one part of this movie that like has influenced me like as a writer more than anything, which is there's a part where Nicolas Cage's character with the Charlie character goes to one of the writing seminars, and Brian Cox plays, I forgot who it is, but there's like a screenwriter who like wrote one of these. He's
a real person.
Yeah, it's like one of these books that like every screenwriter reads, and he like plays that character, and he gives this whole seminar about like he's like, if you do voiceover, you're a hack. He's like, don't put voiceover in your movie ever. And like ever since I heard that, I'm like, cool, no voiceover in any movie. And that's like one of like this movie is one of like the great meta movies too, because there's so many great meta jokes about writing. And obviously there's a lot of voiceover in the movie, or there's some voiceover in the movie that is kind of commented on with that kind of joke. And then even like the whole like climax of the movie is like there's like this feeling that Charlie has about the stuff his brother writes, because his brother writes a lot of like pop culture-y, like very action-y, like kind of like vain and surface level movies, he feels like. And then like the end builds to this like great kind of like epic action-y thing where they're in the swamps, there's like violence, and it's just so good.
And that's what happens in Adaptation. You know, like, it's because it actually was true that Charlie Kaufman was hired to adapt that book, The Orchid Thief, which is a real book by Susan Orlean, who's a real author, and it turned into this. So that is portrayed in the movie, but there's also all these other layers to the movie that didn't happen, but then some of it did. And I feel like it's so complicated, but when you're watching it, it's so easy to understand. Like, you're completely there with them. Yeah. Like, it's not confusing. It's not a movie that, sometimes because I watch so many movies, not that I'm like so much smarter than anyone, but sometimes like people will ask me about it because like I'm just so well versed in like the rhythm of movies and like the trends and stuff. But I've never had to explain this movie to anyone. Like, I've even had to explain like Eternal Sunshine to someone more than this. Like, this movie has the perfect like pacing, and the description of everything is so clear, even though there's like all these layers upon layers of, I don't even know, layers of story.
Well, I'm excited to dig in since I have become acquainted with other substances.
I think all these movies we're going to talk about today take on a new meaning when you acquire new substances.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny that like before I ever had smoked weed, like Charlie Kaufman was that for me probably.
Yeah. Yes.
It was just like, wow, oh my god, like whoa.
Yeah, well, it is kind of like a drug, because these movies really do make you think about human existence in a different way.
Yeah.
Like, I love the scene at the end when things have gone so horribly wrong, and Meryl Streep playing Susan, she says, like, I just want to be a baby again. Like, how did I get here? Like I just want to be new. Like, I don't want to have any of the stuff that happened. She doesn't want it to have happened. She just wants to start over. And, like, sometimes I get really overwhelmed with that, too, because, like, I have dealt with depression on and off since I was, like, 14. So sometimes, like, I would just get so in my head with all this, like, pressure of, like, when did it go wrong? Like, when did I start feeling this way? Like, what was the wrong move that I made? Like, what was the wrong thing that I did? Like, and you're just like, I don't know. Like, I just want to, like, start over fresh. And the fact is, anybody can do that. You don't have to be a baby to do that. But when you're in this, like, I mean, she's literally in the middle of a swamp. She's covered in mud. There's been, like, a murder. I mean, not a murder, but an attack. There's been all this, like, horrible stuff, and she just, like, doesn't even know where to begin to, like, fix her life. She doesn't feel like there's any way out, and her acting is just so good, and the script is so good that they don't have to explain all that stuff that I just explained. It's just the few lines that she says, and you get that all immediately.
Yeah. Charlie Kaufman movies in general are very like script led. Like, because there's some movies that where like the script doesn't really like it's there, but it's not like the backbone. But like Charlie Kaufman like enforces his words upon you in all of his scripts.
And that's also the thing is like I would love to be Charlie Kaufman. Like, that would be like he has the exact like career that I would love to have. Like, he could literally just like hide in the woods, and like I bet he does at times. And then he just comes up with like a crazy idea, and then that's just the idea that he sells for like 5 years. Yeah. And then he just moves on. He probably like gets consulted a couple of times.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I feel like the way Charlie Kaufman depicts like his brain and his like self is that it seems like he doesn't want to be Charlie Kaufman most of the time. So because I've watched interviews and he's like very like what's called like
deprecating.
He's self-deprecating and I think he's like at a point where he like even the more success he gets, like it doesn't like cure his like lack of happiness that he has because he's a very emotional, sad person. Yeah.
He's created an entire generation of sad boys.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
We'll get to Synecdoche, New York, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind very soon.
Lots of sad boys.
He has created a demographic
sad boys.
that has taken over arts and culture, the sad boys of Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah. Well, I think we can move on, unless is there anything else you want to say about Adaptation?
It's just like, it's good.
10 out of 10 movie for me.
Yeah. It's just a great watch.
So the next one is Eternal Sunshine.
Yes, it is.
2004, directed by, once again, Michel Gondry.
No, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Are we moving
right. Okay, so this movie,
I've watched it maybe at times, but I don't think I've watched it straight through.
I haven't seen it in a long time. It was directed by George Clooney, so there's actually a really good story about this that I'm gonna butcher, so find it. Like, you can look it up online probably. Charlie Kaufman has told it recently. Like, he didn't want to tell it for years, but he has told it recently. Like, him and George Clooney had a huge thing over this. Like, they do not like each other. And so I think Charlie Kaufman had an original script, and then it was changed and edited a lot. I don't even know if he's fully credited on this. It might be him and, like, another writer or something. I don't remember the details, but Charlie Kaufman hates this movie. Like,
okay, let's skip it.
He's been very clear about, like, he hates it, so...
Fuck George Clooney. Suburbicon. Wait, what was that movie?
What's Suburbicon? Or Suburb... Something with the suburbs, but... Yeah, I didn't realize that Charlie Kaufman wrote this, so, like...
Yeah.
Oh, because George Clooney directed it. Right, okay.
And I think there was, like, something... George Clooney said something in the press that was, like, really rude toward him, I think, and then he, like, fired back, and it was totally not his style to, like, be talking like that, I guess. I don't remember what happened. There was, like, a very, like, shady exchange, so you can look that up if you want. And I'm sorry about the sound, but you can look that up if you want to, and then we can move on to Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah, people miss sound.
Yeah.
They haven't left their house in This is great stuff. We live right in the backyard of a shopping center with buses that come by and recycling that gets picked up sometimes.
Yeah.
We are all open air here. But Eternal Sunshine.
All right, everybody's fave.
Yes, it is.
Everybody's dark fave.
I can't describe how much I love this movie. It's like... It's definitely in, like, probably my top 3 movies ever.
Same.
It's my favorite representation of love, like my favorite representation of a relationship. It's my favorite cinematography, like the way that the scenes progress with, you know, things falling apart all around them, or, you know, hearing a voice but not seeing a person, and the way that they editorialize their memories as they're happening. You know, like that scene toward the end where they're in the house in Montauk and it starts like flooding and falling apart and stuff, and she's like, was it something I said? Like, why did you leave? You know, because he left that night, and he's like, yeah, like you were so dismissive or whatever, and the memory's happening around them, and they're also commenting on the memory, and they're also trying to change the memory, and she's like, well, maybe this time, like, you can stay instead of leaving, you know? I just, like, I don't know where to begin. I just started with that random scene because I could, like, break down every single scene in this movie and go on and on about it.
Well, you don't have to go that far. I don't know.
Scene 1. Yeah.
I think, like, when it comes down to it, like, I don't know. I definitely, like, watched this movie a long time ago, did not get the full meaning of this movie, then then went through breakups, and then have watched it since going through one breakup, two breakups, three breakups, and it's like, oh, okay, wow. So now I really get this movie.
Yeah, it's another one where like I loved it so much when I saw it, and actually like this movie used to make me so emotional before I was even in a relationship. Like I didn't even know what it was like to be with someone, but I remember watching it. And I remember it was like on New Year's Eve, and I was supposed to go out to a party, and it was like not my first viewing of it. I had already seen it like 10 times, and I just like when it was over, I just started like sobbing, like, and I don't even know why, but it just to me so fully encapsulates like a relationship. And I think because I have a brain where like I tend to go more toward like the alternative way of explaining something, or like I'm always wanting like different stuff or something more interesting. Like I don't want to do like the norm. Like I want to go further and explore a different way. I feel like this movie just spoke to me so much because it's not your stereotypical romance movie. It's so real. Like the relationship just feels so real. And getting to go through the memories like from the most recent all the way to the end, to me just, it's so profound. Like I don't know how to explain it because I'm not Charlie Kaufman. I'm not like as amazing as he is, but
well, I think because Charlie Kaufman is like definitely an intellectual person, and you see that in a lot of his scripts and the way he talks. But this movie, and like a lot of his movies, but like this movie is so emotionally driven, and it's so empathetic, and it's so easy. Cause I like this is a very easy movie to like consider like one of the best of all time, just because it kind of checks all the boxes. Like it's like very well cast, and like every person is important in the script. The script is phenomenal. Like visually, it's an amazing and like very interesting looking film. It's funny. It's very dramatic. It's got like a sci-fi component, which is funny because I'll like see it on like the top sci-fi list all the time, and I don't even think of it as a sci-fi movie most of the time because it doesn't feel like it is, but it like leads in a lot of other ways. It doesn't like feel like it rests on the sci-fi conceit of it, but and also it's again like I think it's a trend of a lot of Charlie Kaufman's movies is that his scripts and his movies just bring out the best in the actors, because all these actors are doing some of their best work in this movie across the board.
Yes. Well, Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet definitely deserved Oscars.
Yeah.
But even like I love all of the supporting characters. I think they are so good. Kirsten Dunst, Elijah Wood, Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo is so funny in this movie.
He's so good, but their whole like Tom Wilkinson is unreal. Even like his wife, like that, like their whole dynamic. Like you understand everything. Like you know what it's like to be in that office. You know what it's like to work with these guys. Like you know what kind of guys they are. And then the whole side plot with Kirsten Dunst's Mary, like being in love with the doctor. I remember when that part was revealed, like I was just like my whole like body dropped. Like not literally, but you know how some people say like your stomach dropped? I was like, no, my whole existence just like fell into the ground, because the way that I think that Kirsten Dunst has never been better. Like her face when like she starts figuring all of it out, and then when she goes and asks Mark Ruffalo about it, she's like, "Did you know about it?" and everything, and he's trying to explain to her, you know, and it's just so perfect, and you understand completely like where she's coming from. And I think they didn't even need to put that fine a point on it with like pointing out like, yes, we go through these horrible things, but it makes us who we are. Like, you can't erase what's happening. You can't erase, like, your history, you know what I mean? And she realizes, like, how she needs to tell all these people what actually happened to them, and she mails out all of the tapes and stuff. And then there's, like, the more romantic perspective on it, which is, like, your mind can forget something, but your heart is just never going to forget something. And not even your heart, but like your soul and like your whole being. The fact that they're both like pulled to go to Montauk at the same time and go to the same places, even though they have no memory of it. I think that's really powerful. And I do like, as you guys know, like I'm a very spiritual person, so I do believe in like being pulled places, or like you know, doing something and not even knowing why you're doing it. Like you're just like, oh, today I feel like taking a course on horticulture, even though I've never been into plants, but something inside me is just telling me that I have to do that, and then it ends up leading you to like something else that is part of your destiny. So that always really, really, really communicated love to me so well, because I do think that like some people are just like meant to be together, or like drawn to be together, and like yeah, you can casually date people and have, you know, whatever, or you can even like be in love with someone, but it might not be as strong of a connection as this one is, where like even though their memories are completely erased, like there's still something in each of them that feels like they have to be movie together, almost like magnets.
Yeah.
So I love that they were able, because that kind of sounds cheesy, like, and I love that they were able to like represent that in this movie, and it's completely not cheesy.
No, yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, like, all of his movies are just like so grounded, and the nostalgia feels so like real. Like, he brings you to so many places, and like, yes, I grew up in like Warwick, New York, so I have like the feel of upstate. I have like Long Island memories because my mom is from Long Island, and then I have like New Jersey memories, and I have like New York City memories of like walking around New York City, and it's like all of this nostalgia of like growing up in this area, and like the larger than life legends of like the ocean, the sea, like the woods, like the suburban loneliness, like it all kind of fits into his catalog.
Yeah. The scene that sticks out to me the most, I think, going off that point, is I remember the first time I watched it, I like laughed so hard at the part when they have the flashback of him being like a little kid, and they have him like underneath the table, and the way they shoot that, so that way it's like adult-sized Jim Carrey, but he looks like a child, and he's wearing like the cape around his neck, and like, cause that's the thing, is like, I think there's Charlie Kaufman tends to write a lot of cynical characters, and I think that like this movie kind of like fluctuates in and out of like being cynical and then being hopeful, and then it has this like sweet ending of like embracing having problems when you're in a relationship. I think, to your point also, that like when you have gone through a relationship and you've gone through the ups and downs, and you have a lot of bad associations with a certain person, this movie like shows that you can like choose to like, if you like really love someone, you can like choose to like work those things out, and like and like no relationship is perfect, and like no interaction is perfect, but like there are some things that are like really nice and worth like working through.
And the most powerful thing I feel like is they don't even necessarily talk about like working through it. Like, it's not like they're sitting there listening to the tapes and they're saying like, oh, well, you say that you always do this, like maybe like you can try not doing this or that, or maybe like it sounds like I upset you when I do this. Like, they just basically like accept that they know where their future is going. Like, they know that they're gonna butt heads, and she like kind of argues it a little bit, and he's just like, I don't care, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care, like I want to be with you. And they already, like, just from the couple of days where they met again, but they don't know it, like they already feel the connection is so strong that they probably could have been told anything, and it's like, well, I don't care, like I just want to be with you anyway.
Yeah, and that brings Jim Carrey's character full circle in a really interesting way, where throughout the film, when they have these memories, is like a lot of times he's resistant to fighting. That's one of Clementine's like big like problems with him, is that he's like won't get into it with her, and he acts like everything's nice, and then they're at the market, and he's like we do this later, and then by the end of the movie he accepts that we're gonna fight sometimes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's just as simple as that.
Yeah, we're opposites.
Yeah.
But going off the childhood thing too, like how genius is the notion of like, okay, they're taking all of my memories of you, so like let's go hide in a memory that you're not a part of,
yeah,
and then they can't find us there.
Yes.
Like, who would ever think of that? That's why I love him so much. Like, I would never think of that. It's just so mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me it's like beyond a 10 out of 10 movie. It's like a 20 out of 10 movie for me.
Yeah, always rewatchable. I know a lot of people who aren't like super film people who this was kind of their gateway into like more artsy films, because like it definitely is digestible if you don't watch a lot of like films that are more like some of Charlie Kaufman's, or ones that are a little more heady or artistic. But this one, I feel like there's enough that you can grasp onto. It's just like a kind of casual moviegoer.
Yeah, it's like a really good meditation on perspective too, which I feel like is so important with every single thing in life. But the way that they're able to talk about in their memories, like that scene I was talking about at the beginning actually, where he says like, well, now I wish I had stayed the night with you, because it, like you're saying, like he is coming full circle. Like he does now have the perspective of like, in that moment, like I didn't have to leave, like even though it was this weird situation and I felt rejected and I felt nervous because we were like breaking into this house and stuff, like now that I'm so far beyond that, and like I have these memories that are being erased because our relationship got so bad that we had nothing else to do except erase each other. Like, why didn't I just stay with you that night? Like, you can feel like that frustration and in the scene, and then they decide to change it. Like, it's just so tragic because they decide to change it, and she's like, well, why don't you stay this time? And then it's just like gone, you know? And that, I think the line that encompasses the movie is when she says like, this is it, like it's gonna be gone soon, what do we do? And he says, enjoy it. Like, that's basically life, you know?
Yeah. Ugh.
we're gonna take a quick break for capitalism.
Okay.
See you in a moment.
Like a statement that you definitely could go off of and like have your own opinion or like ask about, and someone just like, yeah, totally. I'm like,
and then
really?
what?
Like, you don't have anything to say.
Yeah.
And at that point, like going back to the other stuff, like it doesn't matter how attractive you are physically. Like if you have nothing to say, like when I say something interesting, and you have nothing to say, and you're just like, yeah, that's cool. Like, add something. I hate it.
Yes, and.
Yes, and indeed, yes.
Just like that, we're back from our capitalism. I don't even know if we have ads rolling anymore. I hope we still have
Get them
ads.
on there. I need that 30
Yeah,
cents.
we need to update our podcast regularly so that we can get some ads going.
Yeah.
And that people can pay our salaries.
Yeah.
We're back. What's the next movie? Oh, Schenectady.
Synecdoche.
We're already there.
New York.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, I was telling Leah before we started this podcast, I was feeling like very somber and morose and thinking about mortality a lot, like with Chadwick Boseman dying. And just like in general, like during COVID, like I feel like everybody at some point goes through like their mortality, like, oh wow, like I'm still here and other people aren't still here. Like, wow, like one day I'm gonna be the person who is not here. And like I feel like this movie is just like the epitome of all of that. And like, well, what's the point of life? Like, is it your life's work, or is it like to live a life and have relationships, or is it to like do this or do that? And it's like, there really isn't an answer. And it really is like what you make of it. But I guess that's like why we watch movies and why we watch plays, because we want to distract ourselves from the sad aspects of life, you know?
Yeah.
Like, even though Chadwick Boseman died, like, he left a lot of people with very happy memories of him and very fond memories of him on screen. And, like, I don't think he would trade that life for anything, because he probably wanted that life in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Well, again, like, it's all about perspective. Like, I can get really angry thinking about, like, how unfair it is for somebody to get cancer and die when they're so young. Or I can accept that happened. Like, I'm not going to ever change it. That happened, period. And then I can just, like, appreciate and have gratitude for the good things that happened and focus on, like, his legacy. And even if he wasn't, like, Black Panther, even if he was just, like, in some lame movie or whatever, like, you know what I mean? It's like, you still can focus on all the good things that happened in life, because there's nothing that you can do about something so final like that. And it's so hard for us as human beings to accept that.
Oh yeah, because we like things that are in our control, and like especially like the topic of legacy, I think is a very interesting thing. Of like, I think when you get too bogged into worrying what your legacy is gonna be, a lot of times it ends up like backfiring, and you end up like doing things that you would like not normally do. Yeah.
So this movie is.
It just encompasses all that. Yeah, it's just all that and more.
Basically, the main character gets like a MacArthur Genius Grant. I don't know if they call it a MacArthur Genius Grant.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, but like...
How do you... But can you even, like, explain the movie? Like, even from that...
No, but yeah, it just sends him into a spiral of, like, what is a genius? And, like, am I actually a genius? Why am I bringing this here? How can I be unique and actually prove that I am a genius now that people have called me a genius?
Yeah.
Well, I love any movie that plays with time or plays with, like, what is reality. And I think that's why I get so excited watching Charlie Kaufman movies, because I know that it's not just going to be a straightforward, like, point A to point B movie, and that they're going to explore these things in different ways. And I know some people find this movie to be, like, a little too heavy-handed at points, and some people think, like, well, Charlie Kaufman needs to be reined in, so, like, it's better, he has all these ideas, and it's better if he works with Spike Jonze or Michelle Gondry, because it's another, like, genius mind to kind of harness the actual, you know, meat and potatoes of the story and bring that to the screen, whereas this, to some people, feels like just too sprawling, too big. But I love it because I feel like there is heavy-handed stuff that's more obvious, and then there's all these other things in the movie that are so hard to, like, connect to, and maybe it takes a few times of watching the movie, or it takes, like, a different life experience that you've had personally before you get it.
Yeah.
I feel like it definitely has greater meaning once again because of like who he casts and like the meta of it. Because like if it wasn't Philip Seymour Hoffman, would it be as good? Yeah. Probably not. But like somebody who you knew struggled with a lot of demons, struggled with mental health, struggled with addiction and stuff like that. Like, and you watch like him age in front of you, like in this movie, and you're just like, wow, like
it's devastating.
There's a lot of dark things to think about if you're constantly being like, how am I going to be an artist? How am I going to help people? How am I going to dig deeper into this thing? How am I going to like figure out the thing that other people don't know? And it's like sometimes when you figure out the thing that other people don't know, you don't want to know it, and that's why other people don't know it.
Yeah, I think with this movie, and like, I think you have to it's almost like an experimental theater piece where you have to go into it like being okay with not understanding what's going on at certain points and just like letting the feelings kind of just like wash over you. And I'm like someone who like typically when I watch movies I do like the structure of it, but I think when it's done like really well like this, it makes it like easy to just like be like, all right, I'm not gonna get like all of the meanings and like all of the themes in this movie all in the first viewing, and that's okay, because like that's kind of like the point of the movie too, is that you don't get everything out of it, like you don't understand everything when it happens just because it happened, because you like want to understand things.
Mm-hmm. Philip Seymour Hoffman is my all-time favorite actor. I love him so much, and this movie like was really hard for me to watch for a while. Because I had seen it multiple times before his death, but then after his death, because you see him age, which he will never actually do in real life. Yeah. So it's like, it's just hard to think about that, because the movie already deals so much with mortality, and then you realize like, well, this person is reaching these lengths in life that the actual person is never going to get to. And so when I finally watched it like a couple years after he passed away, I just felt like that made the movie all the more meaningful, and like it opened up so many doors into my mind of the greater like purpose of art in general. Like I know that sounds so broad, but like that's what this movie gets at. Like the fact that Charlie was even ambitious enough to like do this is, even if it had completely failed, like I would have been like, still, I appreciate this movie, you know?
All the like the set design is out of this world. It's so good.
Literally building New York City.
Oh God.
I think it's better than Birdman with set design.
Oh.
Aspects.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I think like I'd rather this movie than like the Birdman effects that was trying to be like, oh, whoa, now we're going through this corner, whoa, now we're going around this corner, whoa.
Yeah.
Like I like that this like kind of destroyed and like came back together and like did very unique things.
Yeah.
Again, like I'm using the same word, perspective, but like he's just so good at he's so good at showing how important perspective is, because the way that you don't know about time, like how many years have gone by, how much time has gone by in this movie, like when he's like flirting with Hazel and he's like, look, I have a wife, you know, like she's coming back, and she's like, it's been a year, like she's not coming back, and he's like, it's been a week, and they don't really come to a conclusion on who's right about that. And I think it's like, even if you're just, dealing with anything in life, but say you are dealing with like a breakup or someone leaving you, it's like some people would have the perspective of, oh, this person is coming back, like I just have to wait and then we're going to work it out. And then other people are going to have the perspective of, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You know, move on with your life. And the whole thing with like I think this is one of the parts that some people are like, okay, but the part of like how when she moves into that apartment and it's already burning, and she's like, well, I don't know, like I don't really want to die in this fire, and the realtor's just talking to her like, it's normal, like yeah, the house is on fire, but you know, whatever, that's life. It's like the house that we move into could be the house that like ends up killing us. Like we could die in that house, or like the car that we end up buying. Like it's such a great day. Like we bought a car. It's amazing. I love my new car. And that could be the car that ends up we end up dying in. Like we could, you know, and you never know where you're going in life, and the choices that you make, every single choice that you make is so huge. Like there's that monologue where it's like you only see a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of something. You don't know, like you might not know the outcome of something until 20 years later, or you might never know, or you might not even know, you might know in your eyes, but someone else's perspective on it is completely different. Like we only see our tiny little like human brains perspective on something, and there's actually so much more going on in like every single person's mind and life, and like every atom all around us. And the fact that, again, like he's even brave enough to try to encapsulate that with a movie, with like a 2-hour piece of finite like work is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, he definitely conveys the feeling of being in your own head very well. Whether it's like because of grief or because like if you're like a creative person who like needs to like be like locked down in a room and like thinking about something for a long time, and like showing how you can. It's like very easily and like I think especially now like during COVID, I think I think for me definitely. Damn, we're probably get to go rewatch this movie tonight because this movie does feel like it's like very applicable to the times we're in because I think like when you are isolated from the world the way that we have been in a lot of ways during this time, it's like very similar to what this movie talks about being like shut off from people, and then when you like finally like see them again, it's like crazy to like when you're like, oh wow, I haven't seen this person in like even this past week I saw a bunch of my friends who I've not seen in a while for a birthday celebration. It was nice to be able to like see people and you're like, wow, I haven't seen this person in like multiple months and a year, and like in your mind it doesn't feel as long until you see them, and then you like start remembering how much time passes when you're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like when you think about the grand scheme of your life, like the things that have influenced you the most are probably like in the past 2 years, and those are only the past 2 years. And then you think back to the past 4 years and you're like, wow, 4 years ago I thought this was the most impactful thing that will ever happen to me. And then you go back further and you're like, whoa, like I was just looking out onto my future as like what's gonna happen.
What always trips me out is when I realize like that an era of my life is over. Because, like, you don't, like, the day that you graduate from college, like, that's not when college is over, right? Like, it seems like it is, but it's not. Like, and there are some things that happen in my life that I still feel like, oh, this is, like, a new thing in my life. This recently happened. And then I'll think about, wait, actually, like, when did I meet that person? Or, like, when did I get that job? And I'm like, no, I've been at this job for 3 years now. It's not new anymore. Like, the period of my life before this job is over. Like, and you don't understand that until something like that's why I love the part when the character the guy playing Caden in the play is like, when are we gonna it's not him, it's that the other guy that says like, when are we gonna get an audience in here? It's been 17 years. And it's like no one else like he's pointing that out, and it's like we go and we go and we go and we go and we go through life, and then all of a sudden something just like hits us and like points out like, this is how long this has been. But then you can also go the way of like, well, what even is time? You know, if something is still alive in your mind and like happening, isn't it still happening? Like, and then there's all these kind of like, there's a lot of spiritual practices and stuff that focus on the only thing that's happening is what's happening right now. The only thing I'm going to worry about right now is like doing this podcast with you guys, and whatever you guys have to say is the most important thing in the world. Like, I'm here for a reason. If there's something you want to tell me about, even if it's like something I don't want to hear, I have to listen to you and like pay attention, because this moment is everything. And we like constantly editorialize our own lives, and we like judge ourselves based on stuff that's already happened, and we feel like we can't do this thing or whatever, and it's like none of it even exists. Like, it's all just something that we've made up.
And that's hard. It's so hard to not think about all the things that you're gonna do or the things that you've done in the past.
Especially now, like with times like the world stopping.
Yeah.
And we live in like a capitalist society where like you have to be valued in some way, because we can't just give everybody an equal amount. So like we have to judge people off of their past. Like we can't just be like, oh yeah, you're a person, you're a person, you're a person. You guys all get $50,000 a year, and we're all just gonna be happy. Everybody in the world. No, we don't do that. Even though that would be the easiest way to solve everything, would just to give everybody $50,000 and be like, okay, go figure out what you want to do with it. I'm sure it'll come back in tax dollars eventually. Like, see you later.
I was just telling someone this morning, like, especially with COVID, I was like, why can't everybody in the world just get like a sum of money every month that's meant to pay for your basics, so that no one's homeless, like no one can't get like treated if they're sick, like all the basic stuff, and then like your job is like, how much more do you want? Like, if you want to be able to afford a yacht, then like, yes, go for that, you know, top shelf 103rd level job, right? And do all that kind of stuff if you want it. But there's a lot of people that like can't even imagine being there because they don't even have the basics in their life. And like, why is that so hard? Because
communism and socialism scare people, and so they're like, no, we can't even risk even trying it, not even for once.
Because the scarcity issue of communism, if you give out one of everything to everyone, then there's going to be a scarcity issue. So instead, in capitalism, we create scarcity so that people compete and beat the shit out of each other and compete over prices so that people have to pay the highest price possible.
Yes.
Also, I don't necessarily agree with everything in this, but there's a really great, very long review of this movie by the YouTube channel, I think it's Your Movie Sucks. And this guy, like, he completely tears apart, like, bad movies and stuff, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's negative, like, whatever, but he also does reviews sometimes, and he reviews this movie in such detail. Like, every episode of it is, like, 20 minutes long, and he's done, like, 5 episodes of it, and he never finished it, which is, like, it's like about I'm like, do I even have to say what that means? So I don't even agree with like all of his opinions on it, but I love in general just the dissection of a movie like this because you can find so many things in it. And unfortunately we have a limited amount of time, so I can't even get into all of it, but look that up because it's a really good review.
But on top of that, it's like made to be inaccessible because like how many Americans know what the word synecdoche means?
Like that movie, like looking at the title, you're like, I was like, is it Synodoche? Is it Synodoche? Like,
well, Schenectady is a town in New York. I'm sure you guys know, but it's not spelled like that.
Right.
It's spelled like that for a reason in the movie, and I can't remember what it is. But there are so many.
Because a synecdoche is like a literary term that's representing some like a thing that represents something.
Yeah. Thank you for remembering that.
So that's like what this movie is. It's like this is his representation of.
Well, there's
New York,
so
or like
many
living
things.
in New York and like your representation of life, and it's like you can't just define what life is.
Yeah.
You can just say that this is what it's like for me, and
there's
then people
so
have to
many,
assume.
Yeah, there's like all these hidden things in this movie that, like the painting on the wall, like the colors they use, like there's everything means something. And some of it is in that review, but then some of it is not even. Like, it's like an over-hour review of it, and it still doesn't get to everything.
There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack.
Okay, so we should move on to the most recent, besides this new movie, the most recent that we've seen, Anomalisa. I don't know about you guys. As someone who loves Charlie Kaufman, I've tried so hard, and I do not like this movie. I've watched it so many times.
Oh, really?
I've dissected it. I've listened to so many reviews and stuff on YouTube. I've talked to people about it. I just don't like it, and I wish I did. Like, obviously, there's things I appreciate about it, but I just don't like it. So, what do you guys think?
I think it's definitely a sad boy film.
Yeah, it is a sad boy film. Yeah.
It is like what it's like to be a sad boy, and like that is the thing is like. The reason why we have Trump right now is just because there are sad boys who grew up to be sad men and like got into relationships they don't feel fulfilled in. They hang out with people who don't want to talk about the things. They're always on the road. They always feel isolated. They always feel alone.
Yeah.
And like I think that is the essence of this film that's great. Like I think there are portions of this film that take away from the value of the film because it makes you dislike the protagonist more. And I think like the unlikable protagonist at times and like the not righteous protagonist makes the film harder to watch and like want to like because you're just like, why do I care about this guy?
Yeah.
Because it's like the guy who is this sad, lonely guy is oftentimes the person who has made America bad.
Yeah.
You know, like these are the people who have been in charge. These are the business owners. These are the businessmen who decide like what the prices are of things and like what's in trend and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And like he deserves to be sad. Fuck you. Go hang out in your fucking hotel. I don't care.
Yeah. There definitely is like a fetishizing of like being sad, and I think like that definitely is like a like white dude thing of like wanting to like muck in your loneliness and muck in your sadness. I think the thing that because like the movie that when I remember watching it and I thought it was like fine, and I remember like while I was watching it, I was like, why is this movie like an animated film? Why is this like because it's a stop motion or it's right or like whatever claymation, and then like about like maybe like halfway through, maybe like 3/4 of the way through, they like start to like the main character they start to like disassemble, and like then you like see why this needed to be animated. I think that was the point where I was like, oh, like this is like then it became like a fun movie for me to watch at that point. So
well, do you know about how like the hotel is called the Frigoli and like the Frigoli disorder. Do you guys know about that?
No.
The Frigoli disorder is a disorder where you see everybody as the same.
Okay.
Like you think everybody is the same. So, wow, it's raining really loud.
Yo, the sky is a sad boy now because it's starting to rain.
Right, Charlie Kaufman tears.
Yeah. We're under an awning. Can you hear us?
Yeah, they can hear us.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there's so many things in this movie that are not even accessible to someone just casually watching it like that.
Yes.
But yeah, that's one of the reasons why it pretty much had to be an animated movie, because he sees everybody the same, he hears everybody the same. And I do I do think it's like a romantic concept that like the girl he meets, her voice is the only voice that's different.
Right,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, I do like that in terms of, like, a representation of a connection. But then I guess, like, she's not even real.
Yeah.
Like, he spent the night with that Chinese sex doll instead of her. And all
I
that.
forgot about that part. Yeah. That part is definitely weird.
I just, like, I don't, like, when that twist happened, I was just kind of like, okay, like, I don't know, it just didn't connect with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, it's a lot of like. I think it's like, I'm glad that Charlie Kaufman is getting away from like old white dudes telling us how to feel about things.
Yes.
Like it's about time for him to be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna talk about a different story.
Yeah, and the new movie looks like it's like it has like at least like visually and like it's tapping into like the Eternal Sunshine vibes again. Like it feels like it's kind of a return to form. Do you because going back to what you said before about how some people think that it's like he's better off when he has another director. Do you think that this is a case where the film would have been better served if there was someone else directing it?
No, because he had a co-director.
Oh, okay.
He had a co-director that's more of an animation person, I guess. But no, I don't feel like Anomalisa is like it's nowhere near as sprawling as like Schenectady or anything. I don't feel like he had to be reined in. I just think that I don't like the concept really, and I don't really appreciate it. Like obviously I highlighted something that I did like about it, but yeah, I mean, you know, every single thing is not going to be knocking out of the park.
Right.
And some people, like the person that did that really long Schenectady review, he also thinks this movie is like beyond genius, like mind-blowing and all that kind of stuff, and I just can't connect with it on that level, but it's okay. You don't have to deal with everything.
It's true.
Oh, my phone's getting wet. So this new movie, I'm so excited for. What is it coming out on Friday?
Yeah. Oh my God.
It'll be coming out in 2 days if you're listening to this live on Wednesday when this comes out, or Tuesday
Today is
when it comes
Tuesday,
out
but
today.
that's okay.
You're right. It'll be
Yeah.
out by the end of the day because I'm efficient and
And-
don't edit.
What is time? What happened? Where are we?
Or maybe
Who's
we
listening?
just won't finish this and it'll just end.
Ooh, yeah.
No, we have
to finish it. Yeah, so we're gonna, cause you know we're just
Jesse
obsessed.
Plemons.
Jesse Plemons.
Jesse Plemons, amazing, and obviously Toni Collette and
We're fully
David
torqued
Thewlis.
already. Yeah.
I just feel like I love this movie. I mean, I love the trailer because the trailer was so thought-provoking and made me like want to guess what's going to happen, but I really have no idea what's even going on. Like, what is she seeing? She's seeing like his parents at different points in their life, like as different people. So it is actually kind of like playing with time again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just hoping that it's more of a movie that I'll just be head over heels in love with. But the fact that it's on Netflix and we can just watch it over and over again is so great.
Oh,
It's gonna be very nice to just watch it on a rainy day very soon.
Yeah.
Just like the one we have right here today. Yeah. I think also like because like you mentioned perspective a lot today, and I guess like Anomalisa, there's like very clearly one perspective, but I think Charlie Kaufman does thrive when he has a lot of different perspectives through different kinds of characters within the film. So we'll probably get more of that hopefully in this newest film.
Yes, and we'll do another episode. We'll do a part 2 with a review of the movie.
Yes. Also, by that point, we probably will have rewatched Schenectady again, and probably a bunch of others.
Try to watch Human Nature, maybe.
Yeah, and then we can mediate more on all this stuff. And what does it all mean?
What does it all mean?
You know,
Oh no, my
the
surgeon.
rain comes down on the flowers, and the flowers get sunlight from the sun, and then we eat the flowers, and then there's more life when we die.
Adaptation.
Yeah, that eat us.
Plant-based diets.
Yes. Well, yeah, I was just talking about adaptation because, like, so many many of the other princess companies across the country are closing because of COVID.
Oh wow.
And because they refuse to change the way that they do parties. And we've been doing them. If you're listening to this and you don't know me, I do character entertainment. I run a company that provides like Disney-inspired princesses for kids parties. And, you know, we've had to do them outside, completely, like, no indoors, social distancing, like, with the performance taking place 6 feet away, all that kind of stuff. And I decided to do it because I was like, well, in general, when you go see a show, like, it's at least 6 feet away from you, you know? And, yeah, it sucks not being able to hug the kids or hold hands or, like, get close for a picture. But there's so much that you can do within the constructs of, like, what the rules are. And, like, it's all about adapting. Like, if you don't adapt to what's going on in the world, like I can't believe these people would rather close their companies than just do these, like, distant performances. And I'm not judging. Like, if you really just don't want to do that, that's fine. But if you've worked so hard and you're, like, running a business, you just want to close it. And that's, like, another theme of not just Adaptation, but I feel like all of his movies is, like, change is inevitable. It's the only thing that we can...
This also feels like it's his first film that's, like, very much in the digital age.
Yeah.
You know? Because, like, a lot of his films, like, Anomalisa was animated. That was 2015. Then you go back to 2008. So he probably was writing this in 2006. Smartphones were barely even made. It's a very analog theater world film.
Wow.
So, like, maybe we'll get some of that right now, too.
Yeah.
I just can't wait. I'm so excited, too, for another Toni Collette performance, especially one that's, like, weird.
Yeah.
Like, that sustains me as a person, so...
Yes.
All right, any final thoughts?
Charlie Kaufman, he is a very, very talented writer.
We love you.
Yeah, we love you very much.
Also, if you're feeling sad and lonely, feel free to reach out to Brendan O'Brien on Instagram
Yes.
at
Brendan O'Brien, like Brendan O'Brien, OH, on all the social media platforms.
and where else can they find your upcoming projects and
Oh,
what you do?
go to Late Night Hump. Late Night Hump is the shit. It's the best. At Late Night Hump or LateNightHump.com. We've got a bunch of things coming up. We are finally wrapping up our feature film that all three of us were very heavily involved with, but we're the horns, so keep an eye out for that. We're going to be shooting. Jordan will get more into this because he's going to be directing our upcoming short that we're doing. We have photography on there. We have a bunch of sketches. We're doing a lot of writing. We're getting ready to change the world.
Hell yeah.
And if you want to reach out to Capria Moon,
That's me on Instagram and on Twitter, I think. Yeah. Capria Moon. CAPRIAMOON. Drop me a line. Let me know what you think about. Tell me why I'm wrong about Anomalisa.
and I'm at JFreeze, JFREEEZE. Yeah, check us out online. Tell your friends about this podcast if you liked it. If you're listening on a subscription service, please rate us highly so that more people see us and we can take down Joe Rogan. Have a great day, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay here.